This is Pokemon Yellow Legacy. It's a ROM hack created by Smith Plays Pokemon, designed to take the game we all know and love, that we really, really love, and give it a bunch of revamps and changes, such as more challenging teams, quality of life changes, and even being able to play as a girl for the first time. This isn't your ordinary Pokemon Yellow. It's an enhanced version proven to be more difficult than the vanilla base game. So I thought, why not do a hardcore Nuzlocke of it, blind? Yep, that means level caps, no items in battle, leaving the battle on set mode, and doing it all without looking up documents or running any calculations. What could possibly go wrong? As an extra challenge, I've decided to ban the Fire Grass water starters from the game, as well as Gyarados, as I thought that using them would make the game sort of easy mode. Speaking of which, one of the changes that Smith Plays Pokemon made was giving you the option to play the game on normal or hard mode. Hard mode means your Pokemon are capped at the next gym leader's level cap without being able to gain EXP until you beat that gym leader. It also means you can't use items in battle, and the battle mode is automatically put on set mode. I actually decided to opt for normal mode, not because I'll be breaking any of those rules, but because I think it's more challenging to manage the EXP of your Pokemon leading up to the next gym leader, rather than training them up to the level cap, not worrying about over-leveling, and plowing through all the trainers that come before the gym leader. I've also decided to play as the girl character, since that wasn't an option for us in the original 1998 game. Seeing as to how we already had red and blue, it only made sense to call her green. Our journey begins much like in the vanilla game. Oak finds us a Pikachu, Blue is still an asshole, and we name our Pikachu Lemon. Bit of a close call with Blue, but we managed. Also, they added an experience bar to the battle gameplay, which is sick. It's almost surprising that Game Freak didn't add that until Gen 2. Our first set of encounters, leading up to Viridian Forest, include Beige the Pidgey, Ivory the Spearow, Violet the Nidoran female, and Olive the Metapod. Also, check out these new sprites in the Pokemon menu. This is one of my personal favorite quality of life changes, and it really shows you the amount of work that everyone put into this ROM hack. I decided to take on Blue on Route 22. I hate how that rhymed just now. Like, it's no one's fault, but I hate that it just so happened to rhyme. Like, that is so freaking corny. And I leveled up most of my Pokemon to level 8, while leveling up Olive to level 10 when they evolve into a Butterfree. I have no idea what level Blue's Pokemon will be, so I lead with Lemon and... oh boy. This will be an interesting learning curve. Thankfully no mishaps for this battle, but I'm sure that having no knowledge on enemy teams won't come back to haunt me, right? Now I know what you're thinking. If I'm doing this blind, how do I know what the level caps are? Well, this is the one aspect of this run that isn't actually blind per se. All I did was look at the docs provided by Smith Plays, find the level caps of the aces, and make sure I didn't see anything else in the documents. Here's a real-life reenactment of what happened. If you look at my team, they're not exactly the best for handling rock types. And funny enough, one of the new Pokemon that Smith Plays added was a Poliwag in one of the earlier routes, so this will be interesting to see what I cook up with these guys. The first gym leader is Brock. Let's see what Yellow Legacy has in store for us. Brock has two Pokemon, leading with a Geodude. Makes enough sense? I decide to use Beige to fire off Sand Attack multiple times, all the while having Geodude use some defense curls and try to use Tackle, which he manages to get off one of them against Beige. I then switch over to Olive to start using Confusion. I'm eventually able to take down the Geodude while only receiving one tackle from the legless rock face arms thing. The second and final Pokemon is... Onix. Now before you say anything, I remember Smith Plays mentioning that he and his team spent a lot of time talking about Brock's team in particular, more than any other gym leader, and they concluded that this was the best team for him at this point in the game. In ROM hack creators we trust. Anyways, this Onix happens to really love going for Bide, so I decide to bide my time by going for Growl with Lemon multiple times. Then I switch over to Violet and start using Double Kick, while trying to be careful about the damage that will be dealt back to me with Bide. In one last Double Kick before he unleashes energy, I hope it will be enough to take it out, but it falls just short. This Onix's Bide is about to unleash, and I've quadruple kicked it at this point. I don't want to risk losing my Nidoran female, so I decide to send out a more expendable player. Olive. Onix's Bide comes out, and no crit, which means with one last Confusion, Onix goes down, and we've obtained our first gym badge of Yellow Legacy. Encounter time. On Route 3, we catch a Mankey named Chestnut, and in Mount Moon, we catch a Geodude named Mahogany. In this ROM hack, trait evolutions are changed to level up, so Graveler evolves into Golem at level 38 in this game. That'll be awesome to see when the time comes. We beat the Super Nerd and collect the Dome Fossil, since I picked up the Helix Fossil in my Fire Red run. And with that, Lemon and I are ready to continue our journey. But you know what we're not ready for? Yeah, Jesse and James. I might have played Pokemon Yellow like once before, but I completely forget about this. My team isn't exactly in top shape to handle them. Regardless, I was able to paralyze the Ekans with Thunder Wave before switching to Beige, who's not one of the only ones half or below health. I get off 2 Gusts, which has been changed to a flying type move in this game despite it being normal in the original, before Ekans uses Acid, and thank God that didn't crit. 1 more Gust takes it out, and then Meowth comes in. I switch to Violet, who has Double Kick, as Meowth the sidekick goes for Scratch. Meowth then goes for Bite and, oh my god. Double Kick brings him over half at least. Switch to Mahogany on a Growl, then a few turns later the Meowth falls to some rocks thrown at him. Understandable. Mahogany then gets poisoned by Coughing with Smog, so I have to switch out. And once again I decide to go with Olive. A Tackle drops Olive from 15 down to 8 HP, for a total of 7 damage. If the Coughing goes for Tackle again, maybe I'll live. I use Confusion for some damage, then he goes for Smog and misses. I go for Confusion again, which just misses out on the KO. Coughing goes for Smog, and it's enough to take out Olive, resulting in our first death. Figuring that I was doing this Nuzlocke blind, I figured something like this would happen, but there's still no death that hits the same way like the first one. So we finish off Coughing, and then blast off at the speed of light. We catch an Ekans named Amethyst on Route 4, and take care of Blue at the edge of the bridge in Cerulean with relative ease. At this point, he uses a Spearow, a Rattata, a Bellsprout, and of course, his Eevee. We see some evolutions in the form of Nidorina and Pidgeotto, and then some new encounters include Shamrock the Oddish and Phlox the Venonat. Our last couple evolutions include a new Fearow and Gloom, just in time for the Water-type gym. Next up is Misty. We can already see that she has 3 Pokemon instead of 2. She leads with Psyduck, on par for the animation which is nice, and we lead with Lemon. Lemon has just learned Thunder Punch, so I zap the bird until it becomes Roasted Duck. Next up is Goldeen, which is also cool to see, but it gets zapped until it becomes Tuna. Her final Pokemon, as can be predicted, is Starmie. Starmie is faster and lands a critical hit swift. Then I zap the Starfish until it becomes a half-baked Starfish. Yeah, that's all I got. I then switch over to Shamrock, completely forgetting about the fact that Starmie is a Psychic type despite not having a Psychic move in the base game. No matter, I'll just outspeed on the next turn and put it to sleep. Why in a million years did I think that was going to work? Correction, I wasn't thinking. I was rushing. When I rush, it leads to dumb mistakes like that. But don't worry, if you think that's the last time I'll make a mistake like that, you're wrong. Ivory the Fearow comes in, and while it still ended up being a close call, we take it out with a few attacks and claim the second gym badge. On Route 5, we're feeling alive as we find a rat and name it Navajo. Then Route 6 is full of tricks as we find an Abra. You know the deal here, we only get 1 shot, or we lose the encounter for the route. So hoping for the best, I chuck a Pokeball, and somehow we catch it. Right on. I'll certainly take on one of these for this run. Oh, and we name it Clementine. In Vermilion, we catch a Krabby named Crimson, and see our darling Clementine evolve into Kadabra. We clear through the SSN quicker than Donald Trump clears through personal lawyers, and before taking on the Vermilion gym, we have 2 new evolutions in Chestnut the Primeape and Crimson the Kingler. Another change that Smith Plays made was changing this gym puzzle so that you didn't have to guess the correct switches one right after the other. Instead, all you have to do is find one switch, run around to the other trash bins, and find the second one. That's it. I think we can all agree that this is hands down one of the best changes in any ROM hack of all time. Now time for Lieutenant Surge. I brought my team up to level 28, despite the level cap being 29, just for better EXP management between this and the 4th gyms. I figured that Mahogany, which is now a Graveler, would be a pretty good matchup into this electric type gym. Interestingly, it seems like Lieutenant Surge still only has his Raichu. Guess that makes things easier for me. I'll just go ahead and use This is a ROM. If I had any knowledge on Pokemon and ROM hacks, and had like 2 brain cells, I could probably put together that a gym leader's Raichu would have Surf. Like, of course the Raichu would have Surf. Why wouldn't it? Well, let's hop over to Chestnut. Raichu uses Thunderbolt for some brutal damage, and I get a lucky critical hit Karate Chop, which by the way was changed to a fighting type move from normal type in the original game. I have to switch, so I go to Violet while Raichu uses Body Slam. Raichu then uses Thunderbolt but gets a critical hit to take out Violet. Critical hits in Gen 1 are based on speed, which wasn't changed for this ROM hack, so in a way this wasn't too surprising. But still, ouch. I then bring out Clementine, and after a Surf I use Psybeam to take out the surfing squirrel, ending my quarrel with Surge. It's a little foolish of me to be getting my Diglett Cave encounter after the 3rd gym, but you know, at least better late than never. On Route 11 we catch a Drowsy named Apricot, Route 9 we find Indigo the Nidorino, Route 10 is Pacific the Horsey, and Rock Tunnel we find Buff the Machop. Then we arrive in the spooky, eerie Lavender Town. To the left of it is Route 8 where we successfully catch a Growlithe named Scarlet, despite it having Roar. We catch a Vulpix on Route 7 and name it Carmine. Then lastly we pick up the Eevee in Celadon City and name it Monochrome. Also, I imagine you know how evolutions work at this point, so if you see me battle with any Pokemon that have just evolved, just don't be surprised, okay? But now it's time we leave that all behind as we face on Erica. She leads with Tangela and I lead with Ivory. Drill Peck isn't quite enough for the kill, and Tangela paralyzes me with Stun Spore. Figuring she won't use Stun Spore again, I switch over to Beige and thankfully dodge a bind, then take it out with Quick Attack. She then sends in Victory Bell, and I misclicked here and went for Quick Attack by mistake. She brings me to nearly half and gets a defense drop, so I switch over to Indigo. Victory Bell uses Headbutt twice and gets a flinch on the second one. After a 3rd Headbutt, we take it out with a Sludge, which has been buffed to act like Sludge Bomb in this game. Next up is Ivysaur, awesome to see, and I switch to Scarlet on an Acid that crits, not awesome to see. So over to Ivory on 2 Acids before taking out Ivysaur with a Drill Peck. Last up is the classic Vileplume. She uses Acid to bring me to nearly a 3rd, but we get fully paralyzed. My Pokemon are looking in rough shape, so I first go to Crimson on hopefully an Acid since Crimson has high defense, but she used Stun Spore? How does that even work if Ivory was already paralyzed? Not sure if Gen 1 AI is weird like that, but whatever. I go to Clementine figuring I can kill it quickly with Psybeam, but Vileplume crit kills with Acid. This is right before Kadabra was supposed to become an Alakazam at level 42. Rest in peace, darling Clementine. I then go to Beige to hit the Vileplume with Wing Attack, and then Vileplume takes out Beige with another crit kill Acid. How am I getting cleaned up by Erica of all people right now? Feels bad, man. With Ivory paralyzed and my other Pokemon hurt, I decide to go to Crimson. Vileplume uses Acid, and I get off a Stomp. This is starting to make me wonder if Vileplume doesn't have any grass moves since it's only been using Acid. Oh, that's a Solar Beam. We better hope that we can break through Paralysis right now. And we do. Crimson takes out Vileplume with one last Stomp, ironically dealing the final blow as a Water-type Pokemon in a Grass-type gym. We clear through both the Rocket Hideout and Pokemon Tower with 2 surprise visits from Jesse and James. Catch a Ghastly in the Pokemon Tower and name it Lavender. Don't come at me for my lack of creativity, okay? Catch a Snorlax named Alabaster on Route 12, catch a Scyther on Route 14 named Emerald, and then arrive in Fuchsia City. While clearing through the trainers in the Fuchsia Gym, Phlox evolves into a Venomoth, and at level 42, Lavender evolves into Gengar. Man, I love ROM hacks. Koga's team in the original Yellow game leaves a lot to be desired, so I'm sure Yellow Legacy will present more of a challenge. Koga leads with Golbat, and I lead with Phlox. Love the Golbat as a lead. Koga starts off with a Confuse Ray, which causes us to hurt ourselves in confusion. Word. I switch over to Apricot the Hypno while Golbat uses Toxic but misses. Golbat misses another Toxic, and I go for Psychic for the KO. Next up is Muck, which gets taken out by a critical hit Psychic, followed up by a Tentacruel, which is an awesome choice for Koga. Tentacruel outspeeds to use Surf and bring Apricot down to 80 HP, and I use Psychic to bring Tentacruel into the red. I then switch to Crimson, who comes in on 2 Sludges before taking out the Kraken with a Stomp. Last up is his signature Venomoth. I switch over to Ivory on a Psychic, then avoid a critical hit on the following Psychic to take out the Venomoth with a Drill Peck, ending this toxic battle. In the Safari Zone, I catch a Cubone named Walnut, and then I take on the Silph Co building. which I'll be spending the next 30 minutes talking about. Just kidding. I do have to mention that against Giovanni, I made a mistake in keeping Phlox in to try and put Giovanni's golem to sleep, just for it to miss and have the golem crush my poor Phlox like a cardboard box on an action movie set. Rest in peace, Phlox. His other teammates include a Kingler, a Kangaskhan, a Machoke, and a Persian. I also pick up a gift Lapras named Azure, but I never seem to use it. In the fighting dojo, I pick up a Hitmonlee named Umber, and then I head to the Saffron City Gym. Again, Sabrina's regular yellow team feels like having your password be 123, so I'm curious to see what Smith Plays has in store for her. We see that she has 5 Pokemon, but leads with Abra. Interesting. I led with Emerald the Scyther and set up an agility to help outspeed her Pokemon in the back, and Abra uses Psychic. Son of a Bibarel, that straight up would have killed if it crit. This is the most cracked Abra I've ever seen. On the next turn, we easily take it out with a Twin Needle, which has been buffed to 40 base power in this game, effectively making it 80 base power. Next up is Hypno, but again I go for Twin Needle, which manages to take it out. Then we have Mr. Mime, which goes down to another Twin Needle, a Kadabra that goes down to a Twin Needle, and then finally her Alakazam, which goes down to a... well, you get it. I appreciate that the team made this ROM hack in a way that still feels very similar to the original Yellow game, while giving it some amazing improvements and changes. And I think Sabrina's team is a pretty good example of that philosophy. That extremely intense battle inspires us to catch a Mr. Mime of our own named Pastel. Then we surf up, or surf down I guess, to Cinnabar Island and catch a Grimer in the Pokemon Mansion named Mulberry. I guess we're just gonna pretend that this isn't a bit of a trick question. Like, Caterpie eventually evolves into Butterfree. How am I supposed to know how literally or not you mean this? Pacific the Seadrick gets some practice at the Cinnabar gym, and then we make it to Blaine for our penultimate gym battle. He leads with the Rapidash and I lead with Pacific. Rapidash has been given a speed buff in this game, and it outspeeds and nails Pacific with a high jump kick before we take it out with a critical hit Waterfall. I have no idea if that crit mattered or not, but we'll say that it didn't. Next up for Blaine is Charizard, which is an awesome upgrade. We hit the Charizard with a super effective Waterfall before he uses Wing Attack. Since we outspeed, we simply take out the Charizard on the next turn. He then sends in a Ninetales, so I switch to Crimson while Ninetales sets up a Solar Beam. Well, so much for that. I actually brought Scarlet, which has evolved into Arcanine, for this exact scenario, in case any of his Pokemon had Solar Beam. So I switch them in to take the hit, then go for a bite before the Fox confuses the Hound. I switched to Crimson as Ninetales went for another Solar Beam? That makes me a little suspicious, but I switch back to Scarlet then bite the Ninetales hoping for a flinch, but no dice. They confuse us again. I switch over to our favorite Citrus Mouse for a fast kill, but Ninetales uses Fire Spin. For those of you who don't know, Fire Spin in Gen 1 causes the enemy not to be able to switch out and doesn't allow them to attack, so we sit here for a while with residual damage before taking out the Ninetales with a Thunderbolt. Blaine then sends in Arcanine, and it's time for Lemon to take the bench. I send out Crimson on a double edge, then I use Surf which brings Arcanine low before they burrow underground for a dig. Crimson takes the hit and then takes out Arcanine with a Surf. If you're a fan of the anime, you'll be really happy to see what they gave Blaine as his ace, Magmar. Crimson outspeeds to use Surf on Magmar, then the Fiery Duck uses Psychic. Crimson avoids a critical hit death, and then we use Surf one last time to take out the Magmar, ending this battle without using a single burn heal. Get it? Because he said we'd need one at the start of the battle, and we didn't end up needing one. Not that we would have used an item in battle anyway, but listen, it was a clever line to end the script for this battle, okay? To the east of Cinnabar Island, we catch a Tentacool named Cobalt. Then at Cinnabar Island itself, we catch a Staryu named Mauve. It doesn't take much longer to get back to Viridian City and prepare for our final gym challenge, the one against Giovanni. He leads with a new Duck Trio, and I feel lucky to be leading with Mauve because they're probably one of the only Pokemon I have that can decisively outspeed the Duck Trio and take it out with one Surf. Next up is Nidoqueen, and yeah, it goes down to a Surf. He then brings in Persian, and I use Surf to bring it down low. Persian uses Slash, which crits but fails to cinch the KO. I simply use a Psychic to take it out. Next up is Nidoking, which goes down to a Surf, then Rhydon is up last and falls to a 4x effective Surf. With that, we've obtained all 8 gym badges on this first attempt of the blind hardcore Nuzlocke. Now for the journey to Victory Road and the Pokemon League. On Route 22, I got into quite the stallfest against Blue's Executor because it had Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, Soft Boiled, and Solar Beam. Eventually, we were able to crack the eggs and take care of the rest of his team without any deaths. Victory Road goes smoothly for the most part, aside from one unfortunate death in the form of Pastel the Mr. Mime against a Gengar. We also caught a Rhyhorn in Victory Road, though they'll be hanging out with their Box 1 buddies for the rest of the run. We finally make it to the Pokemon League, and after accumulating necessary TMs and items, I put together what I think will be the best team for the Elite Four. Obviously, I have a general idea of what their teams will be like, or at least what type, but I have no idea what sorts of curveballs will be thrown at us, so I try to create the most well-rounded team possible. With that being said, allow me to introduce you to the Elite Four team. We have our number one pal since day one, Lemon, who, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm very surprised they survived up until this point, and I think that deserves them a spot on the team. Mauve the Starmie, whose versatility and incredible special bulk is a must-bring for the Kanto Elite Four. We have Scarlet the Arcanine who... yeah, it's an Arcanine, what more do you want me to say? Cobalt the Tentacruel, who generally is just a very good Pokemon. Fast, defensive, and has great coverage. Emerald the Scyther, which almost surprised me to include, but obviously they have phenomenal speed and physical attack. Then lastly, I finally evolved my Monochrome the Eevee into a Jolteon, and you'll see soon enough how they come into play. I might have played Kanto before, but I've never played the Yellow Legacy Elite Four. Will the team I've assembled pull it off, or will it all come crashing down? Lemon, what do you think? You're right. Let's do this. The first Elite Four member is Lorelei. Her first Pokemon is Slowbro, and mine is the one that started this whole run, Lemon. Lemon outspeeds and fires off a Thunderbolt, but it just barely misses the KO, even though Slowbro gets paralyzed. Slowbro unfortunately breaks through to hit a Psychic, and crits, plus gets the special drop. Doesn't matter much for using Thunderbolt on the next turn to take it out. Lorelei then sends out Cloyster, so I switch over to Cobalt the Tentacruel, and I'm glad I did because it looks like she decided to detonate her Seafood. I'm also very glad the explosion didn't crit, or else Cobalt also would have become Seafood. She then sends out Dugong, so I send out Mauve on a Surf. I taught Mauve Thunderbolt, so I use that to bring Dugong low while they use Ice Beam. Thankfully no freeze. Another Thunderbolt takes it out. Jinx then comes out, so I use Surf before she uses Lovely Kiss to put us to sleep. I try to stay in and wake up, but a Psychic then Blizzard from Jinx brings us to 38 HP before I decide to peace out. I bring in Scarlet, who comes in on a Bubble Beam. Well, okay. I use Flamethrower on the next turn to burn her like a delicious hot schmo. Last up, Lorelei brings out her classic Lapras. With the Lapras' water typing, I'm nervous of not being able to take it out with Flamethrower, then getting killed by a potential Surf. So this is where Monochrome the Jolteon comes into play. They come in on a Surf, thankfully not for too much damage. Then I use Thunderbolt, which just barely misses out on the KO. Then Lapras uses Blizzard, and no crit or freeze. We're then free to zap the ace out of existence, defeating the first Elite Four member. Next up is the fighting type expert Bruno. For this I feel pretty safe leading with Mauve, and he leads with Hitmonchan. It doesn't take much for me to put together that the Hitmonchan most likely has Thunder Punch, but I decide to take my chances and go for Psychic. And Hitmonchan falls. Poliwrath then comes out, cool new choice, and it falls to a Psychic. Hitmonlee comes out, which also falls to a Psychic. Then Bruno's classic fighting type Onix comes out and falls to a Surf. Last up is Machamp, and this is where we'll find out if Mauve has enough special bulk to take it out in one hit. Who am I kidding? This is Mauve we're talking about here. Nice and easy sweep against Bruno. Agatha can normally be very tricky with different status conditions from her Pokemon, including the fact that she normally has 2 Gengars. But guys, Starmie is just such a broken Pokemon. Mauve legitimately outspeeds and kills each of her Pokemon with one hit. I do want to mention that Smith Plays gave Agatha a Marowak, which for obvious reasons is a very cool addition to her team. So I did want to mention that even if it got swept with one Surf. This leaves us with the Dragon Master himself, Lance. Right out the gate he leads with a Dragonite, and I lead with Cobalt. I figured that Cobalt would be a well-rounded lead for Lance's team, especially after equipping Ice Beam on them, which I used to take out the Dragonite in one hit. Next up is Gyarados, which I don't really have anything on Cobalt to take it out effectively, so I switch over to Mauve on a Hyper Beam. And I'm very glad that didn't crit. We then take out the Gyarados with a Thunderbolt. Lance then brings in a Charizard, much like in Gen 2, and we take it out with a Surf. Aerodactyl comes in, which goes down to a Surf, and then Lance brings in a second and final Dragonite. I figure there's a chance that this will have Thunder, so I send in Monochrome even though he uses Fire Blast instead. Which gets the burn. Okay. Regardless, the plan was to paralyze the Dragonite with Thunder Wave, so I do so before Dragonite lands a second Fire Blast, thankfully no critical hit. I then switch to Cobalt on what now is a Thunder, but thankfully no paralysis or critical hit, so then I use Ice Beam for the 4 times effective KO, therefore defeating the Elite Four completely deathless. But now it's time for Blue. Dabba dee dabba die. And I have no idea what Yellow Legacy has cooking for him. I know this will be the most difficult battle of the run, but the real question is, what exactly am I not prepared for? What kind of surprises will be thrown my way? With all 6 of my team members intact, it's time to figure out if we can finish this run once and for all. Having no idea what Blue will lead with, I lead with our starter Lemon, and Blue leads with Alakazam. And folks, this is easily the most tedious Alakazam I've ever battled. This Alakazam has Psychic, Recover, Double Team, and Thunder Wave. I'll speed through the footage so you have a general sense of what's going on, but over the course of 5 minutes I end up switching back and forth between different Pokemon, getting paralyzed by the Alakazam each time, desperately trying to land hits on the Alakazam as it racks up so many double teams, and along the way I end up losing Scarlet the Arcanine and, yes, our beloved starter Lemon. It sucks to see Lemon go down here, but at least they made it all the way to the final battle. Thank you for your hard work up until this point, Lemon. This grants me a safe switch to Cobalt, and by some miracle we land a Surf to take out the Alakazam. What an RNG nightmare that was. Next up is Rhydon, which provides a sigh of release for us in comparison to what we just endured. Blue then sends in Gyarados, and fearing the potential of Earthquake, I decide to switch to Mauve, but the Gyarados goes for Fly. Smith Plays gave Gyarados the ability to learn Fly in this game. I take the hit, then thankfully break through Paralysis to Thunderbolt the Gyarados down. The Fiery Pup comes out, so I figure it's safe enough to stay in and go for Surf, but we get taken down by a critical hit Hyper Beam. Thank you for practically sweeping half the Elite Four, Mauve. Cobalt comes in to take out the Arcanine with a Surf, and then in comes Exeggutor. Even though the Exeggutor might have Psychic, I stay in to use a super effective Sludge which misses out on the KO, but Exeggutor throws and goes for Reflect. I then use the special attack Ice Beam to take it out. Last, of course, is Jolteon, which poses a threat to Cobalt. Given the state of my team, I decide it's best to stay in and go for Surf, even though Jolteon gets off a Thunder Wave. Thankfully we break through to hit the Surf. However, this is far from over. My team is in terrible shape. Cobalt and Emerald are paralyzed, and Monochrome is nearly depleted of HP, not to mention the fact that they most likely won't outspeed Blue's Jolteon since it's 3 levels higher than mine. If Jolteon goes for an electric move and kills us, or if we get paralyzed, this could all be over. I've never been more nervous at the final steps of defeating the champion, and completing this blind hardcore Nuzlocke in one attempt could come down to whatever happens in this very next turn. So, with great fear, I click Surf. The Jolteon strangely goes for Headbutt, allegedly for the para-flinch strategy, so I wait until the health bar finishes dropping. Critical hit, but no flinch and no paralysis. Cobalt pulls through with a clutch victory by landing a Surf, ending the battle and completing this Nuzlocke by the skin of our teeth. Playing this blind hardcore Nuzlocke was a lot of fun, and I once again want to give a major shout out to Smith Plays Pokemon for creating an incredible ROM hack. I highly recommend that you check out this game and its channel. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, or else you'll be doomed to finding 2 consecutive switches in trash bins for the rest of your life. Bye!